Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. So you guessed it, in today's video we're talking about how to invest and save for our children. How can we give them the best leg up in life to become financially free and secure? And the question is, can we actually make our children early millionaires? Well, we're going to look at that in today's video, and we're going to go through some of the ways that I like to personally invest for my son, and we're going to talk about some of the obvious that you may have seen in other videos. So before we get into this video, I want to talk about the biggest and most important investment first and foremost, which is investing in ourselves. So if we're going to be teaching our children, we need to know what we're talking about. We need to know how we manage our money so we can pass that down and then make good financial decisions for our children. So that is the most important part, is invest in yourself. And it's very much that case of put your own oxygen mask on first. It's also so important that as we begin to learn about investing and we go through different ways, and we're going to talk about it today, is that we get our children involved, because it's very good that we're going to make financial decisions for our children, but ultimately we need to bring them into it, get them understanding. From the age of 5, children really start to take on. They are a walking, talking sponge. So the more that we can teach them about money, the quicker they're going to learn, the quicker they're going to understand why we're investing. And it's just good to have them involved, because, if you're going into a junior ISA, stocks and shares, whatever it might be, obviously that control is being taken out of your hands. So you want to know when they get to the age of 18, they're going to make good financial decisions. So the more you teach them, the better. But we're going to get into that anyway. So now let's look at different ways in which we can invest and save for our children. And stick around to the end, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to include a breakdown of what it might look like figure-wise, based on a realistic amount of what you could be saving for your children, because you may have 1 dependent, 2, possibly more. So, we're going to need to look at this as an achievable way. I've seen some videos where they talk about saving £200-300 a month for your children. That's a lot of money. Not a lot of people can do that. So I think that's a little bit far-fetched, but we're going to look at some realistic ways. Before I start, I do want to say there's no financial advice here. My own thoughts, opinions, and ways that I invest for our son, and we're going to look at those now. So, savings, where to begin? What do we look at? So, I would always start with this basic, and that is the piggy bank jar. And I'll put up a little image here of a piggy bank. It's so basic. I have another video which I did, go check out on my channel, and that's saving coins throughout the year. It's something I do every single year and have done for years. And that is where any change that I get, I pop it into a jar and I change it up at the end of the year. I won't talk too much about that because I've got another video, so go check that out. Get your children into the habit of saving into a piggy bank. Pick them up a jar or something they like where they can put all their coins in, and get them into the habit of, if they are spending notes or you're spending notes for them and you generate change, give it to them and let them save that up, and every now and again let them count that change. And just that's sort of very much the basics of getting into saving, is start with coins, and then they get to change it up maybe every 6 months or at the end of the year if they're willing to wait that long. So that is the very basic. Number 1, piggy bank. Second, we can look at everyday savings account. So this is something I personally use over a junior ISA, and I'll explain that towards the end of the video, why I don't actually use a junior ISA. I'm personally not keen on it, although the interest rate is slightly higher than it is higher than an everyday saver, because on average an everyday saver is 0.1% up to 1.4%. It's in between that bracket, so it's practically nothing that what you're earning. But I'm going to explain why I don't use a junior ISA at the end of the video. Obviously, we can use a junior ISA account, which on average will see between 2 to 2.5% per annum. And obviously you have a tax-free allowance of where you can top up to £9,000 per financial year into that ISA account. If we want to go, obviously, we were talking savings here. If we want to look long-term, and I hope that everyone is going to be investing and looking at this as a long-term thing for their children, we have a junior SIP, which is a self-invested private pension. Now, on average, if we look at this, you can actually put up to $2,880 a year into the junior SIP, and the government will add a tax relief of 20%, which would make that up to $3,600 as a total per year. So that is a long-term investment. You or the child cannot touch that, and obviously that's at retirement age, which at the moment is sitting at 55. They'd be able to release that junior SIP. with the increasing age, obviously as the years go on, we're looking at that's going to be later in life, possibly 57, 58 years old. So ways in which you can increase the amount being saved. How can we dramatically increase? Because look, if you're not able to put that much bi-weekly or monthly, how can we increase our children's savings? Well, obviously there's the obvious. We have Christmas and birthday money. So what I'll do is I'll actually include a link here, and the video I done was teach your kids about money, and there is a jar system where it's investing, saving, giving back, and fun money. So for example, if your child receives money at Christmas or on birthdays, get them to use the jar system. Go check out that video. And what it does is it gets them into the habit of understanding breakdowns using different accounts. Obviously we're using jars as the replication of a bank account, and then the split on that. And we always want to push our child more into the saving and investing, more so on the giving and the fun money. So every time they're getting that Christmas and birthday money, make sure that that's going into the savings accounts or the investment accounts that you have, or the ISAs. Doing chores, setting incentives around the house. If you're able to do this, or you help us out with this, you will get a top up on your cash balance, and then show them. I think it's actually good to show your child what they're saving so that they get the figure in their head, and it kind of becomes a thing of, I want to get it even bigger or stuff like that. So chores around the house is a good way to incentivize them so you can go on to top up their funds. Obviously we talked about getting them to split across the jar method. I think that's really good. It will teach them. And again, I would have included the link, and I'll include that below as well in the comments if you did miss it. Okay, so investing. Where to begin when it comes to investing? We've just covered off saving. Now we're going to look at ways of how we can actually more actively invest the funds that we're saving and putting by for our children. So Stocks and Shares Junior ISA, which is obviously number one. So that is investing into funds. It goes into investment trusts, corporate bonds, and you can buy obviously individual shares depending on the platform that you're using for your child. On an average, you're going to see a return of 5.5% per annum, and you can use platforms such as Hargreaves and Lansdown, which has small amount of fees. I'm not going to explain all the fees in this video, but go check out. You're going to need to see what the fee breakdown is, make sure that it's right for you for the amount that you're putting in, because obviously that's going to weigh up what account you're going to want to use. There's such things as Vanguard, Junior ISA, AJ Bell, and Fidelity. All of those are very reputable, and go check them out. Again, look at the fees, look at the breakdown against how much you're going to be putting in, and what I'll do is I'll actually include the links below. Premium bonds. I'm not a big fan of premium bonds. I think it's pretty much the same as a junior ISA. Again, average return of 1.4 to 1.5%. However, the bonus is you can actually cash in on premium bonds. So that's the only sort of pro I would say to a premium bond against the junior ISA or Stocks and Shares ISA. One of my favourites, which is not mentioned in a lot of videos, is actually physical gold. So buying physical gold for your children is, to me, one of the best ways of storing an investment that is guaranteed to grow over a long period of time. And again, I say a long period of time because that's the way that we need to look at this. So over the last 40 years, gold has seen an average of 10% growth per annum. That's on average. So that's one of my favourite safe havens to store not only some of my wealth, but also going forward it will be for our son and storing his wealth and seeing a long-term growth. Instantly accessible, can be liquidated anywhere, can be traded, can pretty much do anything, and we're guaranteed to see very good returns. And look, if you pick up 1 ounce over the next 10 years, I mean, we're fluctuating between sort of 1,250 to 1,300 pounds per ounce. In the next 10 years, we're looking at potentially gains of 3,000 pounds per ounce. So I think it was on average, if you'd have bought in the early 1900s, $1,000 of gold, round about early 2000s, you're probably looking at around about $80,000 in gold, and that's a huge amount of growth. So gold is very much slow and steady wins the race, but it's never really affected too much by what's happening externally in the markets and the economy. So gold doesn't really get knocked too much. Peer-to-peer lending, this is one that's not mentioned a lot, and I think it's because our risk element is slightly going up here, but I use peer-to-peer lending for some of my son's funds going into property development. So where, a pool of investors will give a peer-to-peer platform a certain amount of money, And depending on the project, you can see a term length of 6 months to say 36 months, really depending on your preference. But I'm going to see returns between 6 and 8% on that money. So as long as I can keep recycling a portion of my son's money, I'm going to see a really good return for him, and that is better. It's accessible, liquid, I can access it, I have control over it, I can pick the projects that it goes into. But I suppose the most important thing here that I want to stress is that if you understand property development, it's a great avenue to invest your children's money, but you are playing with a slightly higher risk because obviously it's open to the property market, exposure to drops and all sorts. The final one as well, how you could invest, again, this isn't the most common one, but it's what I actually do with most of my capital, is fixed investing into UK development, which has multi-asset projects on the go from commercial, industrial and residential, and some partnerships with high street brands. That gives me great exposure to different asset classes, and I might see anywhere between 8 and 12%. So out of the pot of money that we're actually saving, it's great locking it away in a junior ISA, but then it's locked away. That's my pot. I like to be active and I like to know where the money's going, and I like to be able to chop and change as and where. So let's have a look at some of the pros and cons of what we've just talked about. So junior ISAs, the pro of it is it's safely wrapped up until the child is 18. You get tax benefits with it, and all the family can contribute to that child's financial future. So that's a real bonus and a pro. The cons, for me, and this is why I don't actually use one with my son, is the lack of control. You know, it's legally binding, I can't touch it, none of my family can touch it, and my son can access that when he's 18 years old, and I have no say on what he's going to spend that on. We would like to think that during that period of now up until 18 years old, you can inform them, educate them that they're going to make really good investment decisions, but you can't guarantee that. Who knows if they're going to go out and buy a souped up car or spend it on something stupid and then it's all gone down at the Swanee and you've lost it and all that hard work was for nothing. I don't like that. I think it was Britney Spears that put in a clause for her inheritance. Her children can't access it until they're like 30, which some people would think, oh my God, you know, 30 years old, but actually they're going to be fully matured, they're going to understand about money, and I kind of am on the same length of that, is that if my son got to 18 years old and I didn't feel he was quite ready, I have the full control to drip feed funds or help make decisions in order to better those investments and increase the money that we've put by for him. So that is one of the cons, is the lack of control. Junior SIPP. Obviously the pros of that is it's long term. No one can access it. It's for retirement. We're going to set them up really nicely financially rather than the ridiculous state pension of between £100 to £170 a week. And we're likely to have a very good pot, providing that stays within the stock market and sees an average between 5 and 8% all the way up until 55 years old. But again, that can't be accessed until 55 and likely to rise to 57 years of age by the year 2028. Gold, what's the con of gold? Well, personally for me, the only con of gold is essentially it's storing the gold. So you have to physically store it. I wouldn't buy an ETF gold for my son, doesn't make a lot of sense. It's all about having that control. It depends on your preference. For me, again, you've probably understood now that I like the control of it, making the decisions. However, the massive pro, if we look at gold historically, and we go back years upon years upon years, is the value has always increased. Over long periods of time, it shows that it rarely gets shook by market changes. Yes, it will have little dips, but when you compare it to the likes of Bitcoin and stock market, overnight things can literally drop 20-30%. Gold has proven time and time again that it does not do that. It can get shook, but it will never drop dramatically. And what I'll do is at some point I'll pop up a chart on the screen just so you can see the length of time and the growth of what gold has done. Peer-to-peer lending, what's the con of that? Well, it's a slightly higher risk, granted, because you're exposing yourself to the property market, which again, depending on what's happening in the economy and global changes that may happen, will affect the property market. So ultimately, projects can flop, there can be delays, so forth, and therefore you increase your risk. However, the returns are very good, and if you understand property and development, it's a great way to keep growing a portion of those funds. And it's another bit of exposure and diversification to the portfolio. Fixed investing, well, this is a medium risk. It's a balanced risk and it's calculated, has higher returns, but much more exposure to different asset classes. Like I said, industrial, commercial and residential. But that's, I would say, probably the con is you've got more exposure, but that actually is its pro as well because the returns are that much greater. So if we look at this, what are the numbers looking like if we base what we've just been talking about from the age of 5 to say 18? So if we start our children off at the age of 5, we start investing all the way up until 18, what do the numbers look like realistically? And I really want to emphasize that realistically, because some videos, you know, talking about 100, 200, 300 pound a month, I know a lot of people cannot do 200, 300 pound a month, especially if you have multiple children. So let's base this on 80 pound a month. Okay, so let's go on 80 pound a month. So, and I think that's achievable, doing £20 a week. Hopefully that's achievable for you. So from the age of 5 up until 18, so we're looking at 13 years growth. So if we were to pop that into an everyday savings account, we were just to top that up on an average of 1% per annum, you're looking at a total of £12,604 at the age of 18 when they can access that, which is a good amount. And that's just an everyday savers account. That's not additional, and we're not taking into consideration inflation, top-ups from family, Christmas, birthdays. That's just a flat rate of £80 based on a 1% a year over 13 years. So 12,604. 2, a junior ISA on an average of 2.5% per annum. Again, over 13 years, that's looking at £12,792. So a slight jump up. Junior stocks and shares ISA at an average of 5% per annum would total £13,104 after a 13-year period. And then obviously we have the likes of gold, where we could have a dramatically, an increase on, if we're buying per ounce, say if we were to buy right now at 1,300 per ounce, over the next 10 years, that could be £3,000. So it has huge potential, and those are obviously the extras off of the basic investing through ISAs, SIPs, stuff like that. Okay, so now let's have a look at the summary of getting started essentially for our children. So I think the most frustrating thing to now cover off is if the government spends on average, it's around 100 billion a year on state pensions, and what is paid out in pensions across the board, right, is around about 100 billion. For those later in life, they might see a return in their state pension of 100 to 170 pound a week. So, you know, you work all your life to then get towards the end and you have a very small portion to spend, and you can only spend it, you know, you can take out a certain amount of tax-free money, and then the rest you have to drip feed of whatever you've saved, and you get this small amount from the state pension, which is peanuts. Yet if we were to do a 180 and we were to issue every newborn with £5,000 at birth, put that into the stock market, assuming an average return of 8%, then by retirement and continued growth, the pot could be in region of over £1 million, or in excess, you know, or up to £1 million, depending on the top-ups that happen in between that. So I find this crazy because it's unlikely that this is to happen anytime soon, but it just goes to show that if we were to actually switch that around, and the amount that we spend out, well, the government spends out every single year on pensions, if we were to put that on the front end rather on the back end, what we would have, their expenditure would be a lot less. It'd only be around the region of about 3 billion a year, or 3.5 billion a year, opposed to this 100 billion that is paid out every single year. So that's to wrap it up. Those are my ways of how I would invest and save, which I do, and also that I would recommend. There is no financial advice, but hopefully it's opened your eyes. And what I would ask is please do share this video, because I think there are some methods in here that aren't shared in other videos. And hopefully us as parents, you know, we're going to make the decision to go on and save and invest for our children wisely so that they can have a more secure and financially free future. So until the next video, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all very soon.